So we're talking about Hulk today. Actually, we said we'd be talking about Iron
Or
Man
Iron
2.
Man 2, yeah, but we
Yeah,
decided, but and this is technically this is the Incredible Hulk.
the Incredible
This
Hulk.
is
Yes,
Yeah, this is not so Ang Lee's Hulk came out in 2003, and this definitely is not it.
right. Yeah,
Ang Lee's Hulk.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Well, Ang Lee's Hulk was a disaster. It's so bad that I think universally, like, people just don't watch it. Like,
Yeah,
I watched like 5 seconds of it, and I was like, this is terrible. It's just bad. But
right.
then the Incredible Hulk came out in 2008, right at the same time as Iron Man, and we have Edward Norton as Bruce Banner, and it's watchable. It's actually a pretty decent movie. You just watched it, right?
I just watched it. I was actually surprised. I thought that both of the Hulk movies, the Hulk and the Incredible Hulk, were released before the first MCU movies. So I thought that's why they kind of dropped both of those. They dropped both of those actors and they restarted. But it turns out the Incredible Hulk was released like 42 days after Iron Man.
Yeah,
Really, really
yeah,
close release dates on those two.
yeah. So close that you watched the post trailer for Hulk, correct?
Yes.
And you saw that Tony Stark was at the end talking to General Ross, Thunderbolt Ross, and it was kind of setting up for the Avengers. It's actually really interesting.
Right. Yeah.
And so the Incredible Hulk is considered like the orphan MCU movie or like the forgotten MCU movie. People understand that it fits in the MCU, but because Edward Norton and most notably because of some of the special effects choices they made, it's just not connected to the rest of the MCU. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, when we get to your questions. But
Okay.
I like the Incredible Hulk. I thought it was good. And the choices they made in the Incredible Hulk, I kind of wish they would have stuck to when they did the Hulk and the Avengers. But we can get to that.
It's definitely better than I remembered it being. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of
I think
categorized both Hulk and the Incredible Hulk as the same, but it's definitely better than I remembered it being.
Yep.
I did a little bit of reading about the Incredible Hulk, and I was surprised to hear that um, the director actually wanted Mark Ruffalo to play Bruce Banner.
Really?
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
And and Marvel's like, nah, let's get Ed Norton. So that was an interesting twist. I guess this director actually led to Mark Ruffalo being the future Hulk. So
yeah, and I like so we can we'll talk about this real quick. Edward Norton's take on Bruce Banner and Mark Ruffalo's take on Bruce Banner, they aren't that different, but I think over time Mark Ruffalo was able to engage with it a little bit more. But neither actor has really had a chance to really get into Bruce Banner, who he is. But I think Mark Ruffalo probably did the best job. This, but still, there's a lot going on as far as like the toys they had to play with. And there's not a lot to play with.
Right.
So we can talk about that more, but I don't know. I could have went anyway. I know Edward Norton was demanding for a better script, and he was kind of demanding on the studio. You have to be a big jerk to get the studio to get rid of you like that. So Edward Norton probably was rubbed in the wrong way.
Could be. I also read that he was doing rewrites very frequently.
Yeah, and so but I don't know. It's just I don't know. I go back and forth about this.
Yeah,
I like Edward Norton as an actor a lot, and I think that he could have made a great Bruce Banner, but I don't know. Mark Ruffalo, he did a pretty good job too, considering what he had to play with. But anyway, let's get to your questions.
Yeah. So first up, just my familiarity with Hulk is from the TV show, the '70s TV show. So in some ways, this kind of felt like it kind of felt like an extension of that, but I don't know if like Betty Ross and her dad General Ross are part of the comics or not. I don't remember there being a General Ross type character in the TV show.
In the TV show, I don't remember either. I'm almost certain that in the TV show, Betty and the General were not in the TV show. In the comics, they are very much in the comics. So like Liv Tyler plays Betty Ross,
right?
Who plays William Hurt plays Thunderbolt Ross, and they are like the origins of the Hulk is that Bruce Banner was doing gamma radiation experiments for the government, used for the army, and Ross was in charge of it, and Betty was I think Betty was just around. I don't know if they were romantically entwined at the beginning of the comic, um, but she ends up being a huge part of the story for him. But no, like so Betty, so in the comics, Betty and Thunderbolt are a big deal, and in the movie, in the Incredible Hulk, they did a pretty good job representing them too. And even 100%. But in the TV show, not as much.
Yeah, the actor they got for General Ross, William Hurt, he looks like a comic book character.
Yeah, and this isn't the last time we see him. William Hurt was in Incredible Hulk. He was also in Avengers Civil War. He was also in Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. So talking about how Incredible Hulk blends in with the MCU, Thunderbolt Ross, like William Hurt, definitely blends in. So there you go. So that's kind of proof that this movie is part of the proper MCU.
Yeah.
But hey, real quick, real trivia note. The bomb that the Bruce Banner was working on was a gamma bomb, and it was designed to kill all organic matter in the blast radius, but leave buildings and technology intact. That was the cool thing about the gamma bomb he was working on. It's supposed to be a bomb that kills people, but leaves all the stuff.
That's from the comics?
That's from the comics, 100%, yeah.
Okay. Because, one of my questions was, in this movie, it seems like he's supposed to be part of a military project to create super soldiers, kind of related to Captain America and all of that. So is that part of the comics at all, or is that just something they did in the movie?
So we got to go back to what we talked about last week. We've got the original Marvel. So I'm going to start calling the original universe the 616 universe, because that's what's technically called.
Okay.
I don't know why 616. We'll just get to that later. So we got the original 616. We got the MCU, and then we got the Ultimate Universe. And remember, like I said last week, that the Ultimate Universe was created to attract younger readers that didn't need all the history and stuff.
Right. Okay.
So we've got the Ultimate Universe. In the Ultimate Comics, Bruce Banner works with Shield to create to create superhumans. So it's really interesting when we talk about the Ultimate Universe. We've got Spider-Man was created because they were working on super soldier stuff. We've got all the different superheroes in the universe were created to create super soldiers. So in the Ultimate Comics, it was all about trying to create a new Captain America. In the original comics, the 616 comics, that was not the case. So if you look at the MCU and the Ultimate Comics, they're getting to be really aligned right now. The Ultimate Universe is starting to influence the movies really hard. And in this case, this movie was all about trying to create a new Captain America. And the super soldier serum is referenced in the movie in Incredible Hulk. The actor, what's his name, Tim Roth, he plays that bad guy. He was like, "Hey, the super soldier serum, I've heard about it." And Ross ends up giving him a form of super soldier serum. This is actually really interesting because if you remember Falcon and the Winter Soldier, someone creates a new super soldier serum. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
guy in a
it's
shipping
implied,
container in Madripoor, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is implied that there is no super soldier serum, but in the Incredible Hulk, they have a form of super soldier serum that seems to work. So I'm really curious if they destroy that because it had adverse effects, or if it's really interesting how they kind of just didn't. I almost promise you that either didn't remember that from Incredible Hulk, or they just kind of hoped that we would remember. Mm-hmm. But Thunderbolt Ross, he has a version of super soldier serum that he gives to Tim Roth, and it works. So he gets superpowers. He gets kind of crazy. But it works. So I'm really interested in that. But anyway, next question.
So it seems like a subplot of our podcast, at least so far, is how the Marvel Cinematic Universe reminds me of Quentin Tarantino's movies. And so the Hulk also reminded me of Quentin Tarantino's movies.
Which one?
Bruce Banner is he's in Brazil, and he's talking on the computer to a guy named Mr. Blue, and refers to himself as Mr. Green, which is a lot like Reservoir Dogs, where all of the all of that gang, they all go by Mr. some color, Mr. Pink, Mr. Brown, Mr. Orange, and Mr. Orange in Reservoir Dogs was actually played by Tim Roth, who is in the Hulk. So
you're doing a really good job threading that line, dude. You're doing more work than let's keep it going. Let's see if we get more Quentin Tarantino references in these movies. I hope not. I can't. I'm not a big fan of him. Really? I'm an okay fan.
Okay,
we'll talk more about that at some other time. I like
I'm
Kill
sure,
Bill movies.
I'm sure a future MCU movie will also remind me of something from him. So.
Oh, yeah, I can already think of 5 or 6 references, which really gets on my nerves. But hey, that computer, when he's talking on that computer, that is an actual thing from the comics. That is something that happened in the comics. I think he's talking to Captain America in the comics. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Listeners, if you remember, because I don't want to start digging in the computer. Readers, if you remember who he was talking to in the comics, let me know. But yeah, that was in the comics. And it was actually, this was from a comic book line, a Hulk storyline that was actually well received. The Hulk is always well received from the comics when he's treated like a monster, like when he's treated like something that Banner can't control.
Right.
And so this was one of those times where Banner was trying to figure out how to control the Hulk and stuff. But yeah, the computer is in the comics 100%.
So the computer's in there. What about the Mr. Green, Mr. Blue, or any kind of color code names?
Mr. Green, Mr. Blue was that was Mm-hmm.
Cool. Was he also in Brazil in the movie or in the comics?
Don't remember, but it's not unusual. I mean, good God, Bruce Banner and the Hulk have been all over the universe. So I don't remember if they actually spent time in Brazil. Maybe. Right. I don't think so. I don't think so, but I could be wrong.
So in the movie, he was also apparently looking for some kind of a rare flower while he was in Brazil. He had a guy bring him some kind of very unique flower that he tried to make a antidote out of.
Yeah. As well, Banner has been trying to find a cure for the Hulk for a long time. I don't remember there ever being an anecdote like that, but there has been a lot of times where Banner succeeds, and this is kind of important. So before I get too deep into it, have you ever read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
I couldn't even tell you if I've read that or not, but obviously I'm aware of it.
Yeah, so the Incredible Hulk story is based off that. So in the original comic, Bruce Banner's the kind of guy you see now, but when he changed into the Hulk at night. So it's a long story. Okay. I'll get to it as best I can, as fast as I can. So a guy named Rick Jones is playing a guitar in the middle of the bomb site where they're testing a bomb. Bruce Banner sees him, drives a motorcycle out, and then pushes Rick Jones into a safety room or something like that. And then Banner gets hit with the bomb. Now nothing happens to him after he gets hit. He seems fine. But then Rick Jones and Banner are in a room for observation. And then when the sun goes down, Bruce Banner changes into the Hulk. Now this is really interesting. He changes into the Gray Hulk, not the Green Hulk. This is really a big deal. He changes into the Gray Hulk, and the Gray Hulk can talk normally, has his intelligence, and is super strong as well. And so it's a big deal, and we have to give props and respect to Peter David. Peter David is one of the first writers to start looking at the Hulk phenomenon from a psychological perspective. And Peter David came to the conclusion that he wrote a bunch of stories about Bruce Banner's past. And so to fill that in, Bruce Banner was abused by his father. And apparently, if I remember correctly, his father killed his mother or something like that. Something happened. And Bruce Banner accidentally killed his father, which is kind of a crazy story.
How does he accidentally do that?
If I remember the story correctly, he kicks his father, and his father hits his head on a tombstone and dies.
Okay.
But it's a long story. It might have been retconned since then. But anyway, I'm respecting Peter David and his work because I think Peter David's Hulk is the best form of Hulk. If you ever get a chance, read a Peter David collection of the Hulk. He did a wonderful job. So Peter David wrote that because of all this repressed anger, Bruce Banner killed his father out of anger, which he suppresses. He doesn't remember, but he represses anger in general. He thinks anger is bad. You shouldn't show anger. Blah blah blah. And so Peter David wrote that when the gamma bomb hit, it allowed all this repressed anger to come out. And so whenever Bruce Banner loses his temper or gets or anything like that, the Hulk comes out, and that's all that repressed anger. So really interesting stuff. There's different forms of the Hulk. The Gray Hulk is a different version of his psychosis. The Green Hulk is a different version of his psychosis. There's also a couple different versions of the Hulk. That's really interesting. I forgot the question, but anyway, I'm leading to it. So Bruce Banner has always tried to figure out a way to cure himself of the Hulk, but it never works because to cure himself of the Hulk is to cure himself of his anger issues and his psychosis, which he can't do. That's something the Marvel movies never really touched on, which really makes me upset. There is a core reason why Banner has this issue, and they never really touch on it. But there's a lot of work they could do to, like, if they make another Hulk movie, they could definitely have lots of materials to really touch on all this stuff. And I think they could be really well. The Gray Hulk stuff is the most interesting part of it. I would love to see a Hulk movie with the Gray Hulk, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, yeah, the question was about the flower and cures, but
yeah. But so to answer your question, flower, I don't know. Curing, yes. Banner has tried to cure, and Banner has cured himself quite a bit. There's been times where Banner, the Hulk's been completely gone, and then there's been times where the Hulk takes over completely. We got the Professor Hulk that we saw in Endgame and stuff like that. So there's different versions of the Hulk throughout.
Yeah. So as someone that maybe some of my first exposure to comic books was the Incredible Hulk TV show, I don't like any of this talk about a Gray Hulk, because Hulk's just green for me. He's only green.
Okay. That's fine. No, so the Incredible Hulk movie is doing a good job taking the comic book Hulk and taking the movie Hulk and kind of combining them.
Yeah.
And Edward Norton's a huge fan of the movie, 100%. So
TV show.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, I mean TV show. I'm sorry. So you're not wrong. But listen, I understand a lot of people are kind of upset about the idea that there's a different kind of Hulk out there. I recommend that if you ever get a chance, read some stories of the Gray Hulk. I think he surprised you how fun the Gray Hulk is. It's actually really interesting.
He did remind me, how you were describing him reminds me a lot of the Hulk that we get in the later MCU movies, where it's Bruce Banner combined with the Hulk.
Yeah, that's considered Professor Hulk.
Okay.
So because like the Green Hulk that can talk and it's like the Mark Ruffalo attitude, but the Green Hulk body, that's considered the Professor Hulk.
Is Professor Hulk yet another incarnation from the comics?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a classic one, man. This was Peter David. There was this big, massive. It was this amazing issue where, okay, do you remember in the movie, Incredible Hulk movie, like Liv Tyler was dating a guy? Do you remember that before she met Banner or before Banner revealed himself in the movie?
Yeah, that college, right?
Yeah, that's Doc Sampson. Doc Sampson is from the comics, and he's a superhero. He actually gets bombarded with gamma rays and gets green hair and superpowers, like super strength. So at some point, Doc Sampson helps Banner deal with his psychoses because the Hulk is just running rampant. Like the Gray Hulk's coming out, the Green Hulk's coming out. And so Banner comes to terms with these different Hulks, these different versions of themselves, and he technically combines them into one. And there's this amazing issue with this great cover. It's in my office at my work. I have it hung up in the wall. I gotta get it at some point. Hulk comes out, and he is the Professor Hulk, and it's like a huge big deal because all of a sudden you have the attitude of the Gray Hulk, the intelligence of Banner, but the strength of the Green Hulk, and it's combined. And he was super popular. People loved him, and I love him. He's probably my favorite Hulk because it's just like Peter David did an incredible job writing this character. So it's so much fun. He's like, and that's why people were so excited when Professor Hulk showed up, because like we knew what it could represent. So it's really interesting.
Okay, cool. My next question, I think you've already covered a lot of it in our beginning of the podcast, but just the serum that General Ross gave to the soldier. You said that's from the comics. Anything else you want to tell us about that?
No, it's that. So The serum isn't the idea that the government's trying to create super soldiers is from the comics. The actual serum isn't. But if you look at the Ultimate Universe, the Ultimate books, it makes sense from the Ultimate standpoint. And it also makes sense from what the MCU is trying to do. Like, why would we have superheroes? And what entity on the planet would have the resources to create superheroes? Well, the government would. And it makes logical sense that from the MCU's perspective that the government would try to create super soldiers and these government experiments would create problems. So the Hulk was created from a government experiment. Tim Roth gets his powers from a government experiment. Then we get to the Avengers, and we also get, like, when we start talking about Thor, I think next week, Iron Man, all this stuff is all about, like, how do we? It's kind of like, how do we protect ourselves from terrorism, quote unquote, terrorists, you know? And so, because that's what we were afraid of in 2008, 2009, right? And so in Marvel, the MCU's response is we need superheroes to help us with terrorists, you know? And I'm so glad that over time the MCU moved away from that, because we still have a lot of this like 9/11, like the terrorists are in the bunkers getting ready to plan an assault on us kind of mentality in 2008, 2009. And I'm so glad that we got away from that long term.
Right. So is there a Tim Roth type character and the monster that he turns into from the comics?
Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, the Abomination. They did a pretty good job with him. Emil Blonsky, he is definitely in the comics. He is the Abomination. He gets his powers because of an experiment that Bruce Banner was doing on him. The Abomination has been all over the place in the comics, but in the comics, the biggest deal is the Abomination had something to do or did kill Betty Ross. So Betty Ross at a certain point, Bruce Banner and Betty Ross get married, and there's a tragic comic episode where Betty Ross dies. It was the most heart-wrenching. It was the second to the last comic that Peter David wrote. He wrote Betty Ross' death, and it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And it turns out the Abomination was responsible for that. So yeah, totally Abomination. He looks a little different in the comics, but he did fine. He's just a big green monster. They did fine with him.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the first Iron Man, where the bad guy is a variation of the good guy, and we got the same thing here.
Yeah, but
the big bad guy in this one is General Ross, I think, more than Tim Roth or Abomination.
Let's give Abomination a little bit of comic respect. Just a little bit. He's been around for a very long time, and the Abomination. So the idea of gamma radiation in the Marvel comics is a big deal. Gamma radiation is very dangerous, and whenever it touches someone or when people interact with it, it causes problems always. So whenever anybody experiments with gamma radiation or they get exposed to gamma radiation, something happens to them. So with Banner, it released his psychoses. With the Abomination, it made him a monster like that. She-Hulk, it changed her. Thunderbolt Ross at some point changes into a Hulk-like creature. It's a whole thing. So I like the idea from the movie's perspective that Tim Ross's character has issues just like Banner does, but the gamma radiation changes him differently. So right. I think that the monster of the hour syndrome that you're talking about is a problem for these early movies. However, I think that the Abomination is more interesting to me because the way they developed Tim Roth, like over time, like at first he was a super soldier, and then like first he was a regular soldier, then he was a super soldier, then he took more of this mess and got sicker, and then he was just wanting more power, and at the end, his desire to have more power ended up corrupting him. Real quick though, do you remember the doctor that the Banner was working with in that lab that ended up getting hurt?
At the very beginning of the movie, yeah.
No, at the very end of the movie.
Oh, no, I don't.
So, make it the IBM up. I forget who played him. Maybe Todd Burrell. I don't know. But if you remember, Banner meets Mr. Blue, right? The guy who was talking to on the computer, and then Tim Roth ends up wanting Mr. Blue to make him more powerful. He ends up doing it, but at the end he gets hurt. That is he's called I forget his name real quick. Samuel Stearns, he's in the comic as well. And if you look in the movie, Samuel Stearns, he ends up getting hurt, but his skull starts getting bigger. He is supposed to be the leader, which is a comic book villain for the Hulk, which is really interesting. People were theorizing that could be a sequel, but it never happened.
Yeah, he looks like the Toxic Avenger there for a second.
Yeah, basically, yeah. His brain was getting bigger, and the leader, when he reacted to gamma radiation, he got smarter. So it's really interesting.
I should probably say Toxic Avenger is not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's
not yet, but it could at any moment. Who knows?
Yeah, it's from Trauma Vision, I think, is the name of the studio or that made those movies. And I think that's also where James Gunn, director of Guardians of the Galaxy, got his start. Oh, so while you were talking there, that made me think of something else that I did not think to write down. But in the movie, there's the sequence where Bruce Banner's working. Part of his undercover time in Brazil is he's working at a soda factory, and there's this whole sequence where he is repairing the factory, accidentally cuts himself. A small drop of his blood drops down. He freaks out thinking that his blood got into one of the bottles. So he stops the production line, runs down, finds where the blood dropped. Oh, lucky for him, it only dropped on the conveyor belt. He cleans it up, puts the production line back into business. Then we see a shot that, there's also another drop of blood that went into a bottle. And then that bottle gets shipped to Stan Lee's house. Stan Lee in the movie in his cameo drinks the soda. Is there anything like that at all from the comics, or is that just a interesting tie-in for Stan Lee?
No. But Bruce Banner's blood, his radiation. So how can I explain this correctly? Bruce Banner's body generates an enormous amount of gamma radiation, almost to the point where he could be radioactive. So it's not unusual in the comics for his blood to do some weird things. So for She-Hulk, for example, she is Bruce Banner's cousin, and she needed a blood transfusion, and he ends up giving it to her. I'm not sure why exactly, because he would know that his blood could do things to her, but it ended up giving her superpowers like that. And so, like, the idea that his blood is special or powerful is a definite thing in the comics. There was an interesting story where a friend of Bruce Banner's, Bruce Banner as the Hulk. So this is a time when he's Professor Hulk. A friend of the Hulk's he had AIDS and he was dying, and he asked Professor Hulk for a blood transfusion to save him, and Professor Hulk wouldn't do it, and the guy died. So it was really interesting. It's a really sad story, but to go back to what you're saying, it's not unusual for the idea that Bruce Banner's blood is powerful. And in the movie, they were able to detect his like Stan Lee got sick when he drank it because it was radiation poisoning, and they ended up finding out where the bottle was packaged, and that's how you found him. So yeah, that's like if Bruce Banner walked into a lab or something and they had like a rad detector, it would go off. Like, it's just the gamma energy is so powerful in him that's how it would work.
Right. Okay. Towards the end of the movie, Betty Ross is in trouble, and Hulk, she's in a helicopter that's on fire. Hulk saves her by slapping his hands together, and that creates this incredible gust of wind that completely blows the flames out. Is Hulk slap a thing?
Yes, 100%. It happens all the time. If I don't know if you ever played any of the Capcom comic games. Did you ever play like Marvel superheroes or any of those? I
probably
like
played Marvel versus Capcom some.
Yeah. The Hulk character actually has a move where he does that. But yeah, that happens all the time. The Hulk's so powerful that when he claps his hands together, it can create like that kind of air, that kind of force. Okay. Yeah, and like there's another part in that same fight scene where he like slams his fist onto the ground. Like he says Hulk smash. That's another classic Hulk move.
Oh,
like
we all know Hulk smash.
Yeah. There's actually that's a great comic. There's a Thunderbolt comic long time ago where Hawkeye actually takes over the leadership of the Thunderbolts. And in order to try to get the Thunderbolts to be like more popular or get like some attention from the media and from people so they get respect, they end up picking a fight with the Hulk, and and the fight goes okay at first. It's almost like they could beat him, and then the Hulk just at this one part in the fight where the Thunderbolts think they're going to beat him, the Hulk just slams his fist into the ground, and they all like just fall. It's like the raw power of the Hulk. He's like, boom, and it's just like a small town just explodes. And like every time in the comics where people think they can beat the Hulk, he just can do something that's like this. Then this is something interesting. The Incredible Hulk movies, the Incredible Hulk movie that we just watched, did not represent his power like the Avengers movies did. When the Avengers movie came out and the Hulk showed up, I was like, that's the Hulk. He's that powerful. Like when that classic scene in the Avengers movie where Mark Ruffalo says, "I'm always angry." Then he changes to the Hulk and then punches that huge flying serpent thing. Yeah, that's my favorite thing because like the Hulk is like it represented how powerful the Hulk is. The Hulk is super strong. Back in the day, they used to have these things called like a Marvel official handbooks. I might get one at some point. But they always said how much people can lift. Spider-Man can technically lift 16 tons. That's as much as he can lift, which is a lot. The Hulk can lift up to 100 tons or more. If he's angrier, he can lift more. And so 100 tons, like a ton is like maybe one car, maybe like a big like
a very
Hummer?
light car would be a ton. Like your average small car is 2 tons, and your typical car is like 4 tons, I think, these days.
Yeah, so the Hulk could lift. The Hulk could easily lift, probably 100 4-ton cars if he's at his angriest. Yeah. Like, and that's like one huge burst of power. So again, the MCU when they started having the Hulk in the Avengers, they represent his power perfectly. The Incredible Hulk movie, he's a very weak form of the Hulk, very weak, extremely weak. Like when I was watching it, he picked up a Hummer and he was struggling to pick it up. I was like, the Hulk could do that with one hand. Like it's just like so again, the Incredible Hulk movie, I think they just did that for realism's sake. But I was kind of disappointed in how weak he was. And then when the Avengers came out, I was like, that's it right there. That's the power level.
Okay, you talked about Hawkeye being a member of a team called the Thunderbolts. Is that related to General Ross from this movie?
No, I probably even shouldn't say anything. So I talked about the Thunderbolts in our previous episode. So no, that has nothing to do with Ross or anything. Nope.
Okay.
It's an interesting coincidence, but no.
Yeah.
We'll see Hawkeye in Thor when we talk about Thor.
Cool. What about? I mean, that's all my specific questions. Just in general, anything else about the plot that stood out to you that you want to talk about?
Yeah. I think that when we talk about the Incredible Hulk and Edward Norton and everything else, it always feels like an afterthought, and I think this movie deserves a lot more respect than it is. There's a couple things that's interesting that they did. Like there's a scene where Banner jumps out of the helicopter to try to get the Hulk to come out. That's directly from Ultimates comics. That happened in Ultimate Comics, 100%. But other things is like I like Betty Ross. I think Liv Tyler did a pretty good job with Betty Ross. I like Thunderbolt Rose. But the movie didn't have a chance to really flesh itself out. I think it was doing some world building. Because there was some Tony Stark references in the movie a lot. Did you notice those Tony Stark references?
Only the one at the end.
There's two. There's one where the supersonic cannons. They're fighting at the college, and there's 2 supersonic cannons are blasting the Hulk. That's Stark tech. And then when the Abomination is fighting in Harlem, these 2 guys get a rocket launcher and has Stark on it, and they use it. So I think the movie, the problem, the joy of the MCU is how they're all interconnected.
Right.
I love it, the fact they do that. But the biggest problem with the MCU, we're going to start talking about this more and more, is that interconnectedness. They have a really hard time having independent movies doing something like just for the character. There's a couple movies that stand out that do some good work. But for the most part, man, all the movies that we're watching right now are building to the Avengers. That's the only thing they're worried about is making the Avengers movie. And so a lot of the movie, that Incredible Hulk movie, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, these movies have, I think Captain America does a pretty good job on its own, but they're all doing some extra legwork to get themselves to the Avengers, and that just ruins some stuff. And we're going to notice that a lot. But, I mean, the Hulk did moderately well, the Incredible Hulk did moderately well at the box office. And the reason why we haven't seen another movie just for the Hulk is because Universal owns the rights. There has been some talk that Marvel has the rights back, but we don't know. We don't know that for sure. I think Marvel does have the rights back, to be honest with you. But we'll have to wait and see. And it's kind of a shame that you're like Marvel sold all these rights, the X-Men, Spider-Man, the Hulk, and now they're just scrambling to get them back. And it's just like that's one of the reasons why it seems just so discombobulated. But I mean, it works itself out later when Avengers and Iron Man stuff comes out. I mean, Iron Man 2 and the Avengers and all that stuff. It works itself out. But Incredible Hulk, pretty decent movie. Not a whole bunch to talk about, but it's still pretty good.
All right, cool. You've already talked about it a little bit. The post-credits scene. In this scene, General Ross is in a bar. Tony Stark walks in. They have a little chat. That's about it. What else do you have to say about that?
Again, more world building. It was kind of so at the end of the scene, you have Tony Stark walking into a bar, and Thunderbolt Ross is kind of discombobulated, and Tony Stark says, "What do you think of the Avengers Initiative?" Blah blah blah, and it's interesting because in Avengers they know where Banner is, right? And they send the Scarlet Witch, the Black Widow to get him. So if you look at the MCU thought line, it's like Thunderbolt Ross helps the Shield find Banner when they need him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I it's fine. And the only reason why Robert Downey Jr. is at the end of that is because Iron Man did so well, right? Iron Man's a huge hit. Tag him into the movie. Let him kind of like help this movie get a little bit more popular. A lot more people saw the Hulk the Incredible Hulk when they knew that tied into Iron Man. So again, it was a good move on their part, but that last scene is kind of a toss out at some point. Like, it's just like it's there, it's fine, but it's not doing any work.
Right.
I mean, it's doing some work. It's fine. It is what it is.
Yeah,
but
definitely one of the low points as far as post credit scenes.
Yeah. It's just like like Robert Downey Jr. is like, and like what is it like? Robert Downey Jr. tells William Hurt, "Hey, I told you not to use biotech or whatever," and then like Thunderbolt Ross says, "Well, we all can't afford nice suits." Referring to Iron Man suit,
right,
it's like a little too cute, It's like, like it is what it is. But I would love to see an Incredible Hulk movie that really fleshes out how Thunderbolt Ross wants to go after the Hulk. Like that is a classic comic book thing. The Thunderbolt Ross went after the Hulk in so many different ways to get to find that power, to use that power, and the fact that his daughter was in love with Banner is again so much cool stuff connected to it. It's so good. It's just incredibly good.
Anything else before we wrap this up?
No, I think we covered it pretty good. I recommend to people listening, don't watch the 2003 Hulk, just watch this Incredible Hulk. And also, if you don't watch the Incredible Hulk, you can just watch the rest of the Avengers movies, and you'll get enough Hulk. They really did. And one more thing. The Hulk that you see in the Avengers movie is not necessarily the Hulk that's in the comics, and we'll get to that. But again, as far as the special effects and stuff, I think they did a pretty good job with it. And moving forward with Iron Man 2, when we talk about next, the MCU is really getting big, man. Like it's starting to become a thing, and I think not just us, but a lot of people, when we start talking about Iron Man 2, you can start getting excited that Marvel's actually doing something that might work. So when we talk about Iron Man 2, that'll flesh itself out much more.
Right. Cool. Yeah, you already mentioned it. We're talking about Iron Man 2 next episode. And if you like what you hear, tell a friend.
Tell 2 friends.
Yeah, tell all of your friends.
Text your friends. Text your friends with the links.
Yeah, and rate us or review us, whatever's possible, wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah, where are we on? Where are we, Mike?
We're on several different podcasting apps. We just got added to Apple Podcasts, so that's a big one. We're on Google. We're on Spotify, Pocket Casts. Pretty much everywhere you can listen to podcasts, we're there now. We're also on YouTube. I put up a video with us talking on YouTube. So go to all those places, watch us, listen to us, rate us, review us, and tell all of your friends.
And send us your questions
Yeah.
or responses. If I say something that doesn't work, please let me know so I can fix it.
Right. All right. Well,
all right, Mike. I'll see you next time for Iron Man 2.